So you kind of already spoke about this, but I'll just ask again, why do you think it is important that we talk about this history? Why is it something that we should know about?
I think it's important because sadly, we don't have equal justice for everyone in this country. And until we have equal justice for everyone in this country, we have to make people aware, bring people's attention to these issues. I mean, there is Sweet Honey in the Rock has a song. It's called Ella's Song. It's in tribute to Ella Baker. And in that song, it says, until the murder of Black boys and Black girls receive the same type of attention that the murder of white girls and white boys receive, those of us who believe in freedom cannot rest. And I agree with that. That we have to continue to draw people's attention to these issues, even though they are, they're controversial. They're to make people uncomfortable. We have to draw these attentions. If I had my druthers, there would be a federal law that would protect every child from being placed in an adult jail. If I had my druthers, there would be a federal law that would say, protect a child from being tried as an adult. If you are 13, 14, 15 years old, you can't even legally buy cigarettes. You cannot legally buy alcohol. There are many things that you can't do. So why is it that the state can charge you and try you as an adult? It's to me, it's a violation of that child's 14th Amendment, particularly the Equal Protection Clause. And we need to just continue to hammer away, chip away, wail away at these issues.
Definitely. And for people who want to become involved and they want to be able to lend their voice to these issues and kind of help in some kind of way, what are some ways that younger people or anyone can just start to get involved and do something?
Well, social media has been wonderful in this vein or in this regard. I mean, there are many grassroots activists and grassroots organizations across the country. And so, picking a handful of those or selecting a handful of those to support monetarily. There's also the NAACP. There's also the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund. There's also EJI, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the ACLU. There are a lot of organizations out here that are doing this type of work, and happily, there are a number of law schools that now have legal clinics where law students can work on these cases, and they're doing wonderful work through DNA testing and so forth. So that's one way. The other way is to, consider going to law school. Consider running for a legislative office. City council, mayor, state legislature. We need people in all to be interested in these topics, and involved in these with these topics in diverse ways. So there's a lot to do. But I think the most thing and the easiest thing that we can do is to inform ourselves of these issues, and that is to read as much as we can about these issues, pay attention to what's happening in your state legislature or your state assembly with regard to criminal justice, and do what these young and old folks are doing right now. You know, going to the streets and showing up in numbers and letting their voices be heard. I mean, you know, I have the greatest admiration for Bryan Stevenson, but you know, we need 1 million Bryan Stevensons.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And another thing that I've been made more aware of within the past couple of years is how important it is to vote not only in national elections for president and even statewide elections when you're, you know, really rallied up to vote for a governor, but to also vote for more localized elections, whether it's for, like, you know, sheriff or judges, people who really directly affect what happens in your community as far as criminal justice. And so that's something I think is really important, and something I always try to lend my voice to is when there's a local election coming up, and just letting people know, you know, it's election day, here are some of the candidates that are running, here are some places where you can go to find out more information, because I do understand a lot of we're unfamiliar with who the candidates are, and that's what leads to us kind of checking out because we don't know anything about things on the ballot. But it's very important that we become engaged at a localized level, because those are the people that are making those decisions, and we want to be proactive and not always have to be reactive. So if you can put people in place that already align with your ideology on criminal justice reform, hopefully that will kind of prevent some of these cases from happening, and then at the same time continue to fight for the people who've already been prosecuted and who are already in the prison system, and kind of fight on both ends and support these organizations who are doing this work continuously. And I'm glad you mentioned Southern Poverty Law Center and the NAACP, because all of these organizations work together, and it's really important that we support them as well, so that they can continue to do the work that they do, and to encourage students to go to law school and pursue these fields, because that's something I thought too. Honestly, after I read Bryan Stevenson's book, I thought to myself, if I had read this book when I was 12 and not like 30, I might have been in a different career. You know, like I would have thought about the world differently, and that's a good thing, because that I know the books that he has written, also the book by Anthony Ray Hinton that he wrote. These books are really opening people's eyes to things that we just really didn't know about, because didn't have someone to basically speak to us directly about this is what it is, and this is what it's like to live in these environments and have to live through this. So I feel very strongly that the next generation will come out, you know, definitely fighting for this in a different way, and pursuing different careers.
Well, I would just remind folks there are many powerful moments in the movie Just Mercy. Perhaps the two most powerful for me came when Walter McMillan said to Bryan Stevenson that he was placed on death row before he went to trial. And I just want people to take a moment and think about that here is a man who was placed not only in jail, in prison, but was placed on death row in prison before he had even been tried and before he had received a death sentence. So why is that important to me? It's important to me because it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to be convicted. And it was a foregone conclusion that he was going to receive the death penalty. The other moment in the movie that just boggles my mind is that the sheriff, who was complicit in this, in the wrongful arrest and prosecution and incarceration of Walter McMillian, kept his job and was reelected as the sheriff. I mean, this didn't, you know, as much as we like to, as some folks in this country like to talk about China, and some folks like to talk about Russia, this happened in the United States.
Not that long ago. I mean, it's not like
right.
This was like this was not that long ago at all. That's what, honestly, when I first read it, that's probably what shocked me the most out of everything, as I went into it thinking it was in a different decade. And then I realized, wait, when did this happen? And where did this happen? And these people, yeah, it was extremely eye-opening for me. And I grew up in Alabama.
Yeah.
And still, I think a lot of people are like that. We grew up here and it still opened our eyes. Like, we did not even realize to the extent of how these things were.
And it suggests to me, and I don't think this is hyperbole, but it suggests to me that if this happened to Walter McMillian, it could have happened and likely happened to others. Now, the question is, we probably, or I should say, the question that I have is, how many of these other cases do we know about? And so, yeah, there's a lot that we can do, but, you know, I'm just happy and heartened that there are people who are saying no more. No, you know, as Fannie Lou Hamer famously said, that people are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yes. And that actually transitions into my last and final question for you, which is, what is your hope for the Black Lives Matter movement?
All I would say, well, let me first say this: God bless these young folks, and I mean that sincerely. My hope for Black Lives Matter is that it grows, that it continues, that it continues to put pressure on folks, that it continues to hold people's feet to the fire, and that it continues to make folks accountable, and that it becomes like the NAACP, that it's around 100 years from now. Because, you know, we didn't reach this point overnight, and we're not going to resolve these really difficult, complicated, nuanced problems overnight. And so we need folks who are dedicated, folks who have stout hearts, people who are sober, people who are serious. And we are today respecting or paying homage to the late Congressman John Lewis and all those young folks of his generation who basically said, you know, Jim Crow has to go.
Yeah.
And they said that in a country where, or in a country at a time where folks believed that Jim Crow would be here forever. As Governor Wallace said, you know, segregation today, tomorrow, forever. And those young folks back then said, that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah.
And if they could, you know, muster up the strength and the dedication to go into Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana and Georgia and Florida, when they knew there was a good chance. I mean, John Lewis, before the Freedom Riders departed Washington, D.C., they wrote their wills. I mean, they weren't being cavalier. This was serious business. They knew they could die at any moment. So I just say, God bless Black Lives Matter. Keep up, you know, keep up the good work.
Well, thank you so much for this conversation. This is definitely something that I wanted to talk with you about for a while. So I'm very glad that you are available to talk today. And at the end of this video and with all social media posts, I will be putting links to my dad's dissertation as well as websites and information about Virginia Christian for anyone who would be interested in her case and wanting to learn more. I'll also put links to the organizations that we mentioned for anyone who would want to learn more about the Southern Poverty Law Center, Equal Justice Initiative, the NAACP Legal Fund, and how you can support those organizations. But again, thanks so much, Dad, for doing this and having this conversation.
Well, it's my pleasure. I love you. Take care.